Well, it's time to do another Patreon album review. These are always fun, but also a challenge for me because I'm not so great when people tell me to do things, if you haven't already noticed. So this is the last review for Chris H. Chris H has already had me do Comus's First Utterance, as well as Fleur de Cologne for Munmin. And now we come to this one, and it's really interesting that this one happens to be probably the most challenging one of the bunch. So let's dive into it. Pictures by Island. So, Island is a Swedish progressive rock band from the mid 70s. They kind of got their start in 1975-ish and put this guy out in 1977. And this is the only work that they have. They were able to do EP box set thing of all these live performances for Pyro that I haven't been able to track down, so I don't really know what it sounds like. But yeah, we come to Islands with Pictures. I guess Pictures from Islands. This is a very, very interesting work. I mean, this was coming on, in my mind, the second wave of progressive rock. I felt like a lot of the new sounds had already kind of been discovered, and these guys were just experimenting with them. So a lot of the sounds that were unearthed from Van der Graaf Generator and Emerson, Lake and Palmer and like Gentle Giant and like all those different expressions were already kind of discovered, and so now the playing field was, well, what do we do with them? And I feel like Islands started that. Well, I don't know if they started, but they definitely jumped on that kind of experimental wave. The thing that kind of sets this one apart from a lot of the other bands of this time is that it's very, very dark, and a lot of people have kind of attributed those bigger bands to sounding like this one. You can feel the inspirations from Emerson, Lake and Palmer, from Van der Graaf Generator, from Gentle Giant. And this one, it all kind of comes in this extremely dark presentation. I mean, you just need to look at that Geiger album cover to really have a good idea of the kind of music that we have on here. And because this is a prog album, you know, you've got the longer suites of music. The first side of this album only has 3 tracks, with the title track of Pictures being at almost 17 minutes. And the twists and turns and the journey that this album and these tracks go on is very interesting. Like, I love how Introduction starts off with this piano interlude, and the track is called Introduction, and it really is just this arpeggios of chords high up on the piano that then come into Zero, and Zero is this very strange thematic styling of music. And the comparison of Emerson, Lake and Palmer is very apropos to this. Like, you've got a really beautiful running bass beat throughout it, overlaid on these synthesizers and keyboards, and there's a lot of style along that, and the key changes change almost every other minute into something completely different. And it's one of those, like, trying to hang on to a section of a piece that I really enjoy, and then it changing too fast to really get into it. And I really do need to point out that the drumming style, and I'm going to look up the chap's name. I'm going to do my best because they're all Swedish. Gugo Gur Miner. Mir. Anyway, the drum player on this, like, he's able to really keep time and really hammer out these brilliant time signatures and like beats overlaying all this. So I really have to hand it to the man for being able to keep time as well as he does. So once we come into the title track of Pictures, it does allow the listener a little bit of breathing room. We have a little bit more vocalizations and singing on this one, and the singing style is very akin to a Peter Hamill from Van der Graaf Generator. And I feel like a lot of these bands don't really have a good singer in terms of like they're good as a lyricist, but I always find this style of singing a little bit off-putting because it doesn't sound good, if you know what I mean. Like, the singing is very like experimental, off kilter, not quite right. Like, they're always able to hit the notes, but whatever they're trying to do with their vocal works doesn't quite work for me. It doesn't sound pleasant in that sense. It sounds very abstract. It's a hurdle. It's a hurdle for sure. And if you're not into this style of singing, it's going to be a little bit of a uphill climb to really get into the music. But the music itself is a lot more soothing. It's a lot more presentable in the bigger track that is Pictures. And I really enjoy kind of the journey that this track goes on. I do feel like the first half of this album, that first side, doesn't really go anywhere. Like, I don't feel any big crescendos. I don't feel any like big plateaus in terms of music. And because of this, I also feel like there's no real point to a lot of these longer tracks in there being any kind of resolution to a lot of these ideas that they're putting down. Like, they're putting down a lot of really good ideas and a lot of good experimentations, but I also feel like they're not really doing too much with them in these longer stretches of music. Like, there's no resolution. There's no coming together and having something at the end of the day. Like, it just kind of peters out and ends. So the second side has the 2 tracks that are both in the 12-minute mark of Harold and the King Dolores. Really bad, and I hope I got that one right. As well as ending it all off with Here and Now. And both of these tracks are very similar, and honestly, if you had a gun to my head, I couldn't tell you the two apart. They kind of follow suit very similarly to where Zero and Pictures kind of left off. I mean, I will say that Harold and the King is a lot more experimental. There's a lot more of this avant-garde style of music. There's a lot of stop and go as well, where I thought that the track ended and I thought it was transitioning to a different track. Instead, it just kind of used a bit of silence. And I do like when a track does this, but there needs to be a little bit of a point to it. There does need to be some reason for a little bit of silence in the track. And I'm not quite sure if it was really used to the best way. It just kind of felt like the track ended. Now, I will admit, I do love that jazzy keyboard and piano work that we have on the beginning part of this track. I feel like it really does present something new to the album that we hadn't heard yet. I just wish that, kind of like the title track of Pictures, it would do something with these ideas that they were laying out. Like, a 12-minute track is a really good track to introduce something and have it resolve by the end, or like really play around with it a little bit more. It also sounds very, very similar to a Van der Graaf track, if I'm being honest. The singing styles and the organ / keyboard work and the Moogs and synthesizers that we're using on there, it feels very, very similar to a lot of Van der Graaf in that kind of a stint, without really putting their own identity on it. But I will also admit, I do enjoy like the creepy atmosphere that a lot of these tracks bring about, specifically Harold and the King, like right by that end, like how it resolves at the end. It's really creepy. I love the overlays of that synthesizers where it feels very off kilter. It feels like you're almost being covered with all these spiders, and like the singing styles that are overlaid on top of it just put this really off kilter and unpleasant sound while being very engaging as well. And we come to the final track of Here and Now, and again, this just, I don't know, it follows very similarly to all the tracks that came before it. It doesn't really do anything new that I find. It follows very similarly to, again, I keep drawing reference to Van der Graaf Generator in terms of the singing styles and in terms of the playing, very off-kilter and dark in presentation in that sense. And I don't know, it just kind of felt like a for an ending rather than a big huzzah for an ending. And maybe that was just kind of the essence of this album. But yeah, it was just really interesting overall. So in the end, Pictures from Island, it showcases another side of this darker second wave of progressive rock from the 70s. It's strange, it's avant-garde, it's off-putting, but it's also very engaging as well if you're really into this. Like, if you are craving another expression from a Van der Graaf Generator with this technical prowess that you would have from an Emerson, Lake and Palmer, or a Gentle Giant, this one won't let you down, especially if you really do like those atmospheric, moody, darker presentations of progressive rock. For someone like me that really loves the celebration of music, the very happy side of things, you know, the bright and colorful, more symphonic sounding of stuff, this one might be a little bit more off-putting. This one might be not necessarily up your alley. So in that case, I can understand it and I can appreciate the musicianship that's found on here and what they were adding to the musical landscape of the time in terms of experimenting with a lot of those uncovered styles from those who came before. But at the end of the day, this isn't the type of progressive rock that I enjoy listening to. It's a little too grating. It really takes a while for me to warm up to that, and I'd rather put my energy and effort into listening to other bands that are actually a little bit more pleasant to listen to. This one's a challenging album, and if you like to be challenged, then go for it. And there are times when I love a good challenge. I have to be in the right mindset to really enjoy this style of music and really get into it. It's not one that I would choose to put on the reg. So that's kind of where I'm at for this one. For me, I wouldn't skip it entirely. I think it's a great album to go listen to, especially if you're looking for something new and you haven't already heard it. But I wouldn't invest too much time. Like, you can't find it on any streaming services. The only place I could find it was on YouTube, where somebody uploaded the entire thing. So that's kind of where I'm at for this one. I would give this one, a pretty strong stream. Yeah, I'm kind of like, it's not quite a download for me because I wouldn't invest in it, but it's definitely a very strong stream. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at for this one. That's where I'm at. What did you guys think? Did you love this album? Do you hate this album? Are you somewhere in between? Let me know by commenting down below. And I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to Chris H. He got 3 Patreon reviews. I'm sorry it took so long to put them out, but better late than never, I suppose. So if you want to be cool like Chris and you want to help support me, head on over to my Patreon. I left the link down below for you to check it out. Very happy to do my best to get these Patreon videos out in time. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at for this one. That's where I'm at. If you want to see more of me, I've got my podcast, Quid Pro Quo, wherever you can listen to podcasts. I've got the visuals, if you're much more of a visual individual and you want to watch them on YouTube. I've uploaded those on YouTube as well under the Quid Pro Quo banner. And I've got my notes on tabletop role-playing games, where I just finished talking about the Fantasy Flight Star Wars games. I spent like 40 minutes talking about those. So yeah, that's where I'm at. So thank you guys so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out. Eruption.